Good morning, Meta Church. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Maggie, and whether you're joining us here for house church or online, we're so glad you're here. I wanted to remind you guys, next Wednesday, we are having Meta Prayer Night. I'm so excited for this. This is going to be an incredible opportunity for us to just get together as a community and pray for each other and over each other. It's going to be awesome. You don't want to miss it. So if you want to RSVP for that, you can go ahead and click the link in this video description and RSVP via the connection card. It's going to be July 28th at 7 p.m. We're so excited. Be there. And if you are new here this morning, this connection card is the perfect way for us to just get to know you better. So if you want to go ahead and fill that out as well, that would be amazing. There's also a link in this video's description for you to give at Meta Church if that's something that you want to do this morning. So you can do all of that through those links, or you can scan the QR code on the screen with your camera on your phone, and you can go ahead and do that now. This morning, before we jump in, I just wanted to tell you guys that we're going to continue in our The Way of Jesus series this morning, and we're going to get our message from Krista. I'm so excited. She is one of my favorite people, and every time she speaks, it's always so empowering. It's so motivating. So I know that this morning will be just that. For me personally, this series has just helped me to continue in my journey, following Jesus, learning more about him and becoming more like him. And specifically for me, it's just taught me even more so about how I can find my worth in him and how much he really does love me. And just like Ricky was talking about last week, this week I also put into practice, or I tried to put into practice, making space for him to speak to us in the silent moments. And honestly, I was surprised, which I know I shouldn't have been. But he did show up and speak to me in ways that he hasn't in a while. And it was just a really wonderful, amazing, beautiful reminder that he will show up for us when we seek him and give him opportunities to speak into the silent moments in our lives. So I'm just really excited to continue this series with everything that Krista has to share with us this morning. So before we do that, I'm just going to say a quick prayer for us, and then we'll jump right in. Dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity for us to just get together once again and talk about you and learn about you with you as the focus of our morning. God, we just thank you so much for the community that you have built here for each of us. And God, I just thank you for Krista and the words that she is going to share with us this morning from you. God, I thank you that we can count on you to be there for us when we call on you and when we give you space to speak to us. God, I just pray over this series and this message this morning that each of us would just be able to take something from it to help us to just draw closer to you, to become ultimately more like you. God, we just thank you so much for everything you have done for us, and we love you and we praise you, and it's in your name I pray these things. Amen.
The way I trust in your timing. I can't see the way, but I know that you're leading, and I won't give in now or surrender to feelings. No, I won't back down. Freedom is calling, 'cause you've never failed and you never will. No, you're always with me. You never fail and you never will. Because of the cross, I have no need to fear. All of my wrong, your love has nailed it there. My past is gone, 'cause you buried everything. As I rise with you, and I'm gonna stay, defying in triumph. I made this demand in the name of my King, the Lion. Then as I lift my hands, all my walls they come crashing. They can't withstand the weight of your glory. 'Cause you've never failed and you never will. No, you're always with me, and you never fail and you never will. No, because of the cross, I have no need of fear. In all of my wrong, your love has nailed it there. My past is gone, 'cause you buried everything. As I rise with you, as I rise with you, as I rise with you. Oh, you are the lion and you are my king. You're breaking through and will yield to nothing, 'cause you always win. Come on! Yeah, you always win. Because of the cross, I have no need of fear. All of my wrong, your love has nailed it there. My past is gone, 'cause you buried everything. As I rise with you, because of the cross, I have no need of fear. All of my wrong, your love has nailed it there. My past is gone, 'cause you've buried everything. As I rise with you, because of the cross, because of the cross, because of the cross, because revealing heaven's wonders. Spirit come, Spirit come. What you spoke is now unfolding, and all your children shall behold it. Dreams awaken in this moment. Spirit come, Spirit come, and pour it out. Let your love run over. Hear it now, and let your glory fill this house. Pour it out. Let your love run over. Hear it now. Let your glory fill this house. Now the world awaits your presence, and this power is within us. Oh, hallelujah. So we will rise to be your witness. Spirit come, and pour it out, pour it out. Let your love run over. Hear it now. Let your glory fill this house. Pour it out. Let your love run over. Hear it now. Let your glory fill this house. Oh, come and change the atmosphere. Come and let your heaven come down and touch us. We are pressing in. We are pressing into you. Oh, Holy Spirit, fire, come and consume us. Fill us up, God. Fill us up. Tongues of fire, testifying of the Son. One desire. Spirit come, speak revival. Prophesy like it is done. One desire. Spirit come, tongues of fire, testifying of the Son. One desire. Spirit come, speak revival. Prophesy like it is done. One desire. Spirit come, Holy Spirit Let our hearts continue burning. Come on, church, let's press in. For our King is soon returning. As we hold to this assurance, Spirit come, Holy Spirit come. Pour it out, let your love run over. Hear it now, and let your glory fill this house. Pour it out.
Good morning, Meta Church. It is so good to be with you guys this morning. We are going to jump right into our passage today. Philippians 2:4-5 says this. It says, abandon every display of selfishness and possess a greater concern for what matters to others instead of your own interests. And consider the example that Jesus, the Anointed One, has set before us. Let his mindset become your motivation. You see, this is all we've been doing this summer. We've been in a series called The Way of Jesus, and all throughout this series, all we have been seeking to do is to make his mindset our motivation, to look to Jesus, to see how he lived, and use the example he set for how we should live our lives. Today, we're going to talk about the thing that should set us apart as his followers. A.W. Tozer says this, every Christian should be a walking miracle and never be the kind of person that can be explained. I love that. You see, as Christians, we are called to live a life that can't be explained. We are called to be so different that we stand out. We are called to love so palpably that it's literally incomprehensible. Quite frankly, we are called to baffle our coworkers and our communities because the way we live is so countercultural. This is the way of Jesus. We could baffle the world if we lived this one thing as seen in Philippians 2. If we lived out this one thing, and it's this. If we treated others as greater than ourselves. You see, this is the way of Jesus. This was his mindset. He put others above his self. And this is the attitude as Christians we should have. This is what should set us apart. But here's what I know about us is we're not so good at that, right? We never have been. Here's what I know about you and I, no matter how different the way we were raised was. You could have been growing up in a different city, in a different state. You may have even spoken a different language than me, but here's what I know about you and I is that one of our first and one of our favorite words as a child was the word mine, right? You ever ask a child, like, can I have a bite of your banana? And they will grab that banana, they will clutch it so tightly, they will hold it to their chest, and they will say, mine, right? One of our first and favorite words is the word mine. Not only that, I can attest to this, but as a mother, your mother has spent countless years of both her life and your life just trying to teach you to do this one thing, and it's called sharing, right? That's because from the moment we are born, from the day we are born, we are so much better at putting ourselves above others. And let's be honest, as adults, we don't grow out of it, right? Our selfishness just takes on different forms. As we get older, our selfishness can look like things like self-serving, right? We can be self-serving, self-seeking. Self-serving says if it makes me look better, makes me feel better, then I'll do it, right? When I moved to New York City, one of the first things that stood out to me not only was the astounding amount of people that we can pack into a train, but also networking culture. Networking culture astounded me. It was interesting. This idea of interacting with people so as to obtain something from them. Connections, contacts. You see, that's fine for business, but how often does that posture invade our personal relationships? That posture that says, if it makes me look better or feel better, I'll do that for you. If I can get something out of that relationship, then maybe I'll interact. We can be so self-serving. We can also be self-righteous, right? Self-righteous is the idea that we're better or more superior than others. And I'll be honest, I had a bout with self-righteousness when I was in 4th grade and when I was asked to be a bus monitor. Yep. I was asked to be a bus monitor. Yes, that's a thing. And yes, it also means that I didn't have a lot of friends. But here's what you need to know about being a bus monitor. It was my job to hold people to my morally superior bus riding standards, and I was rewarded in Tootsie Rolls every Friday to do so. And that was my first experience with self-righteousness. And that is the spirit that's so often in us, right? We think our way is the best way. We may even be rewarded for that. And yet it is the antithesis of following in the ways of Jesus and putting others above ourselves. Maybe more than any other selfishness we're going to talk about today. We can be self-seeking, self-serving, we can be self-righteous. And then there are these little sneaky little selfishnesses that kind of creep into our lives. They may not start off that way, but they can take us there. Selfishness like self-loathing. Self-loathing is the idea of being so down about yourself and your circumstances. It doesn't start off selfish, right? It can start off sad and insecure, but if we're not careful, it can take us to places of pity and wallowing, and we can become so hyper-focused on ourselves and our pain and our questions and frustrations in this life that we won't see anybody struggling around us. We can be self-loathing, and maybe even the most sneaky selfishness. We can be self-preserving. We can experience self-preservation. This I like to call responsible selfishness. I love rules and responsibility, and this feels responsible. This is all about protecting oneself. But here's what research shows us about self-preservation is that in times of crisis, we tend to increase our self-centered actions, that self-preservation can actually prevent us from loving and seeing other people. I know this from experience because a couple of weeks ago, we were with our friends, our best friends from college. We were in Panama City, and it was someone's idea, I can assure you it wasn't mine, to take our children that were all under the age of 10 up on and one of those like up in the air ropes courses. And we had this plan that each adult would take a child, and when that child got afraid, when they felt like they couldn't go on, we'd be there to support them, to keep them safe, to inspire them to keep going no matter how hard it was. My friend, her daughter, chose me as her adult to go with her against her better judgment. And let me tell you what did not happen, okay? Here's, in short, what didn't happen. You see, I did not and would not be any support to her because up there, 20 feet in the air, I went in full-blown crisis mode. I never thought about that miniature human that I was responsible for. There were no encouraging words out of my mouth or keep going, you've got this, Kendall, nothing. I was in full-blown crisis mode, and that's what happens to us, right? Self-preservation isn't bad on its own, nor is insecurity and networking, even being a bus monitor. But if we aren't careful, these things, these self-focused things in us can prevent us from following in the way of Jesus. As followers of Jesus, we are called, like it said in Philippians 2, to abandon every display of selfishness, even the most seemingly responsible and best-intentioned kinds. To leave and disregard anything that places the focus solely on us rather than others. It's not the way of Jesus. We are told to abandon anything that keeps us self-focused, but we are also called to be different than that. In Matthew 23, Jesus addresses selfishness within the walls of the church. Gasp. What? There's selfishness in the church? Yes. You see, Jesus is speaking to religious people in the church like you and me, not criminals, not heathens, not that crazy man that yells at everybody on the side of the street. He's speaking to the people of the church and speaking in a passage titled Superficial Spirituality. Jesus instructs the disciples, speaking of those who seemed religious. He says these words, "Don't do what they do. For they tell you one thing and they do another. They never lift a finger to help ease the load." Notice it doesn't say that these people don't see needs. No, they see it. They just refuse to do even the smallest thing about it. This is what I like to call, I can't get my hair wet Christianity. I can't get my hair wet Christianity. A lot of people don't know this, but Ricky and I actually have been pastors and doing ministry all over the country long before we ever moved to New York City and started Meta Church. And one of the interesting things is that over the course of the last, decade of our lives, we have heard creative ways that people say they can't serve, that they can't volunteer. And one of the ways that I hold dearest to my heart was the time that we asked a woman if she would be willing to be on the greeting team. The people that stand outside the church and welcome people in with a smile and a hello and maybe a sign. I'll never forget what she said. She said that she would not be able to volunteer. She couldn't because given the chance that maybe one day it might rain and she might get her hair wet. You see, when we are so self-focused, we can't be bothered with the most menial tasks for the most minuscule reasons. We can't get our hair wet. And what does Jesus call I can't get my hair wet Christianity? We see in this passage, he calls it superficial spirituality. They see the burden. They hear the need. There's a need to volunteer, but they don't do even the slightest thing about it. They can't lift a finger. Jesus goes on to say this, everything they do is done for show and to be noticed by others. They want to be seen as holy. Look at me. They crave the seats of highest honor at banquets and in their meeting places. And oh, how they love to be admired by men with their titles of respect, aspiring to be recognized. You see that self-seeking attitude? It's all about them. But here's how Jesus instructs you and I as his followers amidst all the selfishness that's swarming around us. Here's what he says, you are to be different from that. But you are to be different from that. You see, Jesus calls out selfishness in the church, anything that places the focus solely on ourselves rather than others, and he calls it exactly what it is. He calls it superficial spirituality. It's not the way of Jesus, he says. Don't be fooled. It may look like it's good from afar, but upon closer inspection, it's not what it looks like. And you see the same thing happened in our own church a year ago. It looked good from afar, so good, but it's not what it looked like. Let me take you back to March 2020. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic that would sweep through the world, at the start of that in New York City, we were being pummeled by COVID. It seemed like one day we were fine, the next day the country shut down, and then before we knew it, there were 700 to 1,000 people dying every single day. It was terrifying to live in New York City at that time. It felt apocalyptic. We had no idea what was going on, what this virus was, how you could catch it. We didn't know how to protect ourselves. We didn't know why so many people were dying every single day. One of my memories during that time was having to take the dog outside. I remember our apartment was at the end of the hall, and so I'd have to walk past everyone's doorsteps. And as I would walk to the elevator, I would see the newspapers and the magazines on every single doorstep, magazines showing the staggering number of deaths that were happening in our city. The refrigerated trucks. I remember walking outside. I remember how eerily still that time was. Nobody was outside except for people like me who were walking my dog and also people who were leaving. I remember watching people shove luggage frantically into Ubers, doing whatever they could to get as quickly and as far away from New York City as they could. You see, living in New York City was apocalyptic in March of 2020. It was terrifying, and everyone was leaving. So many people left from our church. It was crazy, actually, when you think about it. A church of 45 to 50 people at one point was dispersed among 16 different states. And hear my heart when I say this. Please hear my heart when I say this. There is no judgment, not even a little, for those that left. You see, it was terrifying to live in New York City. No one else in the country knows what those that lived in New York City felt, the terror we felt. No one blames anyone for leaving. But here's something that's equally true. This is something Ricky and I, as pastors in this city, this is something we cannot sweep under the rug. You see, it's okay that people left. It's even understandable. But hear me say this. There's also so many opportunities we missed because people did. I'll say that again because please hear my heart. It's okay that people left. It's even completely understandable. But we missed opportunity after opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to be the church when our city was in crisis because so many people did. We were given opportunities at the time to deliver masks to underprivileged communities. At the time, we could not get masks. So there's this virus taking over our city, and there's no way to protect ourselves. We were given the opportunity to grab hold of, get and receive all these masks, and then be able to distribute them to anybody that needed them. We were given the opportunity to deliver groceries to senior citizens, people that were at risk with the virus, and at the time, all the grocery shopping, everything was just closed down. And so every time these people tried to go get the food that they needed, they were putting themselves at risk, and we were given the opportunity to go grocery shopping for them, to deliver their groceries for them so they didn't have to worry about that. We were given the honor and privilege of being able to bring pastries and coffees and cards, words of encouragement to those that had come from all over the country to help serve our city in their time of crisis. The doctors and nurses that were serving, who were exhausted, we were given the opportunity to serve them. But here's what you need to know. We had been given so many opportunities that we had to turn down because there was no one here, so few people here to help. There was no one here to be the church in the time of crisis. Even more heart-wrenching, possibly, is at that time something astounding started to happen. Pastors from all over the country, they were watching what was unfolding in New York City. At that point, COVID had not taken over the United States. Really, everything was predominantly happening in New York City, and people were watching on the news and they wanted to help. And so pastors and churches were saying, we want to come alongside you. We want to support you. And they sent us tens of thousands of dollars so that we could help people in need. It's what we had been talking about as a church for years. We wanted to help those in need, right? We wanted to love our neighbors like ourselves, and this was an opportunity. We had funds available, and we were going to give them to whoever needed it. Some of you that were a part of our church at the time remember Ricky and I, in the beginning of June of 2020, telling the church, we have all this money and we want to help people. After we had checked in with every person in our community and made sure they had everything that they needed, we brought it to our church and said, who do you know that has a need? If you don't know of a need, you need to start checking in with people. Check in with your neighbors. Check in with the moms from the schoolyard. What about your coworkers? Who have you been investing in these last couple years? Make a phone call. Check. See what they need. If they need a bill paid, if they need groceries, we've got you. They don't even need to know where the money comes from. They don't ever have to come to our church, but we want to help those that are in need. It's what God was equipping us to do. We brought it to our church. And ask me, how many people were presented to us? How many people How many needs, how many names were presented to us? 0. 0. Not because there weren't needs, right? There's 20.6 million people that were out of a job at that point. Unemployment, like people couldn't even get a hold of them. People had no way to pay their bills. Businesses were going down left and right. And here's what we would find out. It's not that no one needed our help. It's that we had failed to check in and ask. That's what we would learn. We failed to check in and ask, how are you doing? What do you need? I don't think that's because we're bad people. I know it's not. I know the people of our community. I know what we stood for. Gosh, I loved that community of ours. It's not because we're bad people, far from it. But here's what I do believe, is that we were in full-blown self-preservation mode. So focused on protecting ourselves because we were scared that, like me on the ropes course that day, we could be of no service to anyone else. And it was as if Jesus was saying in that moment of the community that Ricky and I had built, the community that Ricky and I loved. He was saying, it may look good from afar. You guys may have said that you love your neighbor as yourself. As a church, you may have declared, we live to love. But upon closer inspection, it's not what it looks like. It may seem like I'm pointing fingers, and that would be very self-righteous of me if I was. But here's what I want you to know about me is that I struggle profoundly with self-preservation in my life. I'm an Enneagram 6, which means I secretly trust nobody. Nobody. I watch my back, and maybe even more jaded than that, I'm a pastor's kid. You see, as a pastor's kid growing up, you learn to protect yourself. You learn this because you learn early on that there's consequences, good and bad, in being a pastor's kid. For example, when I was young, I might get 2 prizes out of the treasure chest for learning my memory verse. That's a good consequence. Other times, I would watch people bolt when they saw my family while we were walking down an aisle at Target. They would literally dodge our family. And that was a surefire sign that my dad must have said something wrong and that maybe they were leaving the church to go to the one down the street. Not only did I learn that they would dodge me and my family at Target, I also learned that we would in fact have to dodge them. Because there's this strange thing that happens, and I'm not very sure why this happens, but when people leave churches, oftentimes and sadly they like to throw punches and hurl criticism when they do. So I learned not only will they dodge us, that we in fact will have to dodge them and the things that they might say. One of the most damaging things someone ever said about me and my family was when I was in middle school. A woman was leaving the church and she started spreading this little rumor that would end up making its way all the way to the church leadership. It was about me and my dad. My relationship with my dad as a kid was so close. My dad was my superhero. I loved my dad. I loved spending time with my dad. My dad took me on dates. I felt like a priority in his life. I felt special. I felt protected with him. I had the relationship with my dad that every man would dream of having with his daughter and this woman. As she was leaving the church, she started spreading this little rumor that, like I said, made its way all the way to the leadership. And it was this, that my relationship with my dad could not be the way it seems, couldn't be as good as it looked. And she proposed the idea that maybe, just maybe, he was molesting me. You see, in that moment, as a little girl, as a pastor's kid, I learned this little defense mechanism called self-preservation, right? The ability to recoil back from the hurt, to build up a wall to protect myself so that no criticism could ever hurt me ever again. But you know what I also learned in these moments? Is that that same wall that I built to protect myself also would in fact prevent me from loving others in the future. And that was always something I would juggle with throughout my life. I tell you this because in the last 9 months, I've been in self-preservation mode. In the last 9 months, I have watched my husband be mercilessly attacked by people leaving our church. This person that I love, that I respect more than anyone in the world, I've watched people attack our character, poke holes in our integrity, question our mental state. And here's how I handled that. I went back into self-preservation mode. Built up walls, recoiled back so that nothing would hurt. It's why no one in our community, though it is small, could say, you know who I've spent so much time with? Krista Ortiz. You know who has been so encouraging and so available and present and loving in my life? Krista Ortiz. No, because I've been in self-preservation mode. I tell you this because I'm sorry. Because I want to ask for forgiveness because I have more in me as a woman, as a leader, as a pastor, as a friend than what I've been offering you. I tell you because I'm sorry, and I tell you this because this applies to me as well. When we are so focused on protecting ourselves, we cannot be of service to anyone else. When we will build up walls to protect ourselves, those same walls then prevent us from loving others. It's prevented me from loving you. And Jesus is calling you and I to be different than this. He's calling our church to be different than this as well. You see, because a church that ignores the call to serve is nothing more than a country club. And as followers of Jesus, if we choose not to serve and engage meaningfully with the people God has placed in our lives, no matter how valid the reason we feel, then we are nothing more than superficially spiritual, masquerading around like the real thing. Hear me say this again. Meta Church, if we ignore the call to serve, understand there is a call for every church to serve. If it's a church, Meta Church, if we ignore that call, then we are nothing more than a glorified country club. And if we, as his followers, you and I, do not serve and engage meaningfully with the people that God has placed in our lives, then we are nothing more than superficially spiritual, masquerading around like the real thing. I hope Ricky and I have made it crystal clear that we are uninterested in pastoring a superficially spiritual church. And I hope that because you are still here, that you're uninterested in attending one. You see, Meta Church will never be conducive to that I can't get my hair wet Christianity, nor do we ever want to miss out on an opportunity to be Jesus' hands and feet ever again, no matter the crisis. But more than that, more than all of that, I want to be like Jesus. Do you want to be like Jesus? More than that, I don't know about you, but I want to grab hold of every ounce of everything that God has prepared for me, everything that he wants to do through me. But none of these things will ever happen if we don't abandon our own selfishness. Jesus is calling you and I to be different than that today. And here's what I know about us is we want to be different than that. We do not want to be selfish. No. Take it away, right? We are naturally selfish for sure. But here's what I know about us is we are uncomfortably selfish. We're naturally selfish, but we are uncomfortably selfish. It's why when you meet with a friend And maybe you get so caught up in conversation and you divulge everything that's going on in your life. And upon walking home, you realize that you never asked them about them. And so you send that text message apologizing. I'm so sorry. I was telling you everything about me and I forgot to ask about you. Why do we do that? Because we're maybe naturally selfish. That may be what we go to, but we're uncomfortably selfish. It's not what we want to be. For kicks, if you ever want to, feel free to, next time you're on the train or on the bus and you see a pregnant woman walk in to the bus, watch as people indulge their naturally selfish side and not get up to give up their seat. But lean in and watch as they do so uncomfortably. They'll strain to make eye contact. They squirm in their seat because we may be naturally selfish, but we want to be different than that. We're uncomfortable with it. And here's the beauty of Jesus. Here's the beauty of the gospel is if we want to be different, then we always have the opportunity to be different. Philippians tells us to abandon every display of selfishness. But once we've done that, it says, and then consider the example that Jesus, the Anointed One, has set before us. Make his mindset your motivation. You see, once we have abandoned any display of selfishness within us, no matter how small and no matter how big, the way of Jesus tells us then to make his mindset our motivation. And Jesus' mindset was this. 4 simple words. It's not about me. It's not about me. This is the way of Jesus. This was his mindset. This is what, as followers of Jesus, our attitude should be. This is what would set us apart, is living a life saying, this is not about me. It's not about me. This was his mindset. You see, Jesus was others focused, not self-focused. Jesus was others focused, not self-focused. Throughout Jesus' life, we see that he went places. He stopped. He leaned down. He reached out, all for the sake of others. Others was his focus. It's also the reason he came. John 10:10 says this, Jesus speaking, I have come so that they may have life and have it to the full. Why did Jesus come to this earth? For others, to love others, to serve others, to heal others, to lift others up, to dust others off, to point others to a God that loved them beyond comprehension. It's the reason he came, is his love and his heart for others. But not only that, we see that up until the very last day of his life, others, not self, others was the focus. Up until his last day, his last meal, when none of us would blame this guy for making this one moment in time all about him. And here's what we find Jesus doing: serving others, attending to others' needs, treating others as greater than himself. See for yourself. John 13 says this: Jesus knew that the night before Passover would be his last night on earth before leaving this world to return to the Father's side. All throughout his time with his disciples, Jesus had demonstrated a deep and tender love for them. And now he longed to show them the full measure of his love. So what did he do? It says this: so he got up from the meal and took off his outer robe and took a towel and wrapped it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' dirty feet and dry them with his towel. How did Jesus spend his last hours on earth? Serving others. I love how it says in this passage that throughout his time with his disciples, he had demonstrated his love for them, but he had not shown them the full measure of his love until he did what? Until he served them. Understand, we will never be able to show the full measure of God's love apart from serving. We will never be able to show your roommate the full measure of God's love, your coworkers the full measure of God's love. We will not be able to show our communities and our neighborhoods the full extent of God's love until we serve them. Not only that, we see in this passage the stark contrast between our selfishness, right? The superficial spirituality Jesus called out and the way of Jesus. We see that superficial spirituality in that passage that we read earlier was all about what they could gain from others. But Jesus' mindset was all about what he could give of himself. When others craved seats of honor, he gave up seats of honor. When others wanted to be seen themselves, Jesus made it his mission to show that others were seen. And when superficial spirituality refused to ever lift a finger to serve, the way of Jesus said this, that there's no task too menial, no time too inconvenient, no person too unworthy to serve. This is the way of Jesus. This is my Jesus. This was his mindset, that there's no task too menial, that there's no time too inconvenient, that there's no person too unworthy to serve. This is his mindset. And this is what it should look like in our lives. This is the spirit and the posture that as followers of Jesus, we should have. And if we did, here's what I believe. If we did say, it's not all about me, and if we did say that there's no task too menial, no time too inconvenient, no person too unworthy to serve, here's what I believe. That we'd be well on our way to living a life that can't be explained, just like Tozer said. All because we made Jesus' mindset our motivation and lived out as followers of Jesus these 4 simple words. It's not about me. Our next steps out of this message are simple. I've got 2 next steps for you to take personally, and then I have a really, really, really exciting next step that Ricky's going to come on and share that we have for our church. The first next step for you is name the self-focused action that we need to abandon. I said we for a reason, because I hope that I've made it crystal clear that I have so many self-focused actions that I have to abandon. Whatever has kept you focused on yourself in this season, God wants you to leave it behind. There's a powerful prayer you can pray, and it's this: take it away. God, this is what's had me so self-focused. God, take it away. Maybe it's self-preservation. Maybe it's self-loathing. Maybe you've been self-seeking, self-righteous. Maybe it's something that I didn't even mention today. Whatever has had you focused on yourself and has been blocking you from seeing others, ask God to take it away. Leave it, name it, and get rid of it. You see, God is asking us to grab hold of his heart for others again. The next step is this: start here. Those of you in house church, I'm going to ask you to do 2 really awkward things, okay? The first one is I want you to look around the room. I want you to look at the people next to you, the people across the room. Maybe there's 2 people in house church today. Maybe there's 13. Look at the people in the room, because you know what? We all want to know where we should start. Who should we start serving first? Who should we put above ourselves first? And I want to encourage you, start here. Start with the people that are sitting next to you, the people that are a part of our community. Put those people above yourself. The second thing is going to be even more awkward that I want you to do. I want everyone in house church, I want you to look at my front door. I want you to look at my apartment door. I want you to look at my wreath in all of its glory. And here's what I want you to commit to, is I want you to start by committing to serve whoever God brings into this room in this season. In this season of our church where we are meeting in house church, I want us to commit to starting here, to starting by loving the people of our community, by putting them as greater than ourselves. and by loving every single person that walks through that door and putting them as the focus and not ourselves. The reason I ask us to do that is because I believe that what starts here in our community will not stay here. You see, throughout us planting this church, God has given us this prophetic vision that's clear, is that what starts in us, what God does in us, will one day spill out onto the streets. What if we loved and served each other so lavishly? What if we served the people next to us? We treated each other greater than ourselves. And what would happen the day that that impacts our neighborhoods and our workplaces? Because it starts with what's in us. We've got to start here. And the next step, the last step, I want to invite Ricky up here to share the incredible next step that we have for our church.
Man, what a great message from Krista. A challenging message for sure, kind of a gut punch for some of us maybe. And I don't want to re-preach what she said. Nothing worse than the person who gets up on stage after the pastor or the communicator has finished delivering the message and then they try to re-preach everything that was just taught. That's not what I'm going to do. But to reiterate what Krista said, this idea, this notion of self-preservation, some of the other things that she mentioned in terms of why we kind of withhold or why we choose not to engage with our neighbor and the people around us and love and serve in that way. Meta's heart has always been to serve our community. Meta's heart has always been to plug into our neighborhood, to be a church that ministers and serves within the context of our neighborhood. And that's why, as she mentioned, we have an exciting next step that we want to share with you to help kind of get us to kind of kickstart that once again and get us into motion and serving and making a difference in our neighborhood. And so we actually have two opportunities coming up over the next, let's say 5 weeks or so, where you can take today's word and begin putting it into practice collectively. As a community, we can do this. It's not just you, but it's all of us. And so we have two opportunities that I want to let you know about, and I want you go ahead and grab your phone. If you're watching at House Church or on your computer, on TV or whatever, we're going to pop up a QR code for the connection card where you can sign up today. Listen, don't wait till tomorrow to say, I'll get to it next week. I'm going to give you the dates. If you know the dates that are available to you, and somebody is obviously really mad because they're just honking like crazy, but if you know the dates that are available to you, go ahead and sign up and RSVP to get involved in these service projects coming up, okay? So the first is going to be coming up. It is a food distribution opportunity that we have coming up on Saturday, August 21st, okay? It's the third Saturday of August. It is 4 Saturdays from today. Let me make sure I've got my date right over here. But on this day, we're going to be partnering with another community organization, and we're going to be handing out food, distributing food to people in the Isaac Houses projects. So lower income households, people who maybe don't have the access or the extra means to getting food. And so on Saturdays, they show up and they distribute food to that community. Now, this is something that's literally where I'm standing on 88th Street is just like 4 or 5 blocks up the street. I think it's 5 blocks up the street from me. And so it's an opportunity for those of us who live on the Upper East Side to get involved, to serve, to make a difference, to show the love of Jesus in a very tangible and practical way. We'll be out there, we'll talk, we'll enjoy building relationships with people, and then we'll meet a physical need by providing free food to these people. So I want to encourage you to sign up for that. Again, the QR code is up on the screen. Use your phone. Don't wait. Look at your calendar and say, okay, I'm available on that Saturday. Plan on being involved. You sign up, we'll get you the details and make sure you have everything you need to know for that. And then the second opportunity is something that we're going to be doing a work with the Washington Houses. For those of you who've been around Meta for a while, they're the housing projects that surround the neighborhood and the building where we used to meet in person for in-person services back at El Taller. And so they're doing a back-to-school drive on Labor Day weekend. And right now, what they're thinking about is doing something on Thursday evening, September 2nd. Okay, so Thursday, September 2nd, a back-to-school drive, back-to-school party of some sort. So we want to be involved in helping provide backpacks, distribute those. We're going to buy these things. We're going to stuff them with school supplies. And then we want to be there in person to help distribute them and pass them out to the kids and the families in need. And so again, this is just another opportunity for us to put our money behind something, but more than our money, it's an opportunity for us to put our heart and our actions behind something. I was just talking with someone this past week about serving and actually getting kind of in the mud and getting dirty and making a difference and how much that matters to me personally. And so this is an opportunity for us to do both. Yeah, we could buy all the backpacks, we could finance it, but we want to be more invested in that. We want to be emotionally and spiritually invested in that. So these two opportunities, Saturday, August 21st, and then Thursday, September 2nd. Go ahead, scan the QR code, fill out the connection card, and the additional comments or notes or information about serving, click those things, check those boxes, fill out those details, and then we'll make sure we communicate everything you need to know to get involved. This is our opportunity. For the better part of a year, we've talked about Meta 2.0. This is our opportunity to catalyze this, to move this forward, and to say, we're going to be different. We're going to stand out in this community because of the way we love, the way we serve, and the way we care about the people around us. So Meta Church, it's been an awesome Sunday. I hope you guys have a great day doing whatever it is you're going to be doing today. Have a great time, safe time, and let me pray us out, and then we'll call it a wrap. Jesus, thank you for this day. Again, thank you for this word from Krista. Thank you for the opportunity that we have as individuals and as a community to show your love in a practical and tangible way. I pray that it would make a difference. I pray that it would be transformative in our lives. But more than that, I pray that it would just help people see that there is a God who cares and loves and sees them and wants them to feel loved, seen, heard, and understood, and that we are the avenue or the vehicle through which that's made possible. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great Sunday, everyone, and we'll see you guys next week.